Hey everyone, it's Dave from Valor Fire Training. I wanted to share some thoughts that came up yesterday during a discussion. We were talking about the Atlanta fire captain who was suspended for 4 days without pay, Captain Danny Dwyer. If you haven't heard the story, Captain Dwyer was on a truck company. He showed up at a fire and successfully rescued a victim who unfortunately ultimately succumbed to her injuries. But in the course of that, Captain Dwyer violated a couple department policies. The fire department, after several months of review, decided that they were going to invoke discipline on him. Whichever side of the fence you sit on, we're not going to get into the specifics of discipline for this specific situation. But by the fire chief's own admission, the acts were courageous and showed valor, but because department policy was violated, they were going to discipline the firefighter. So the issue that I have with it is simply this. This opens up a whole dialogue within our profession of how we look at discipline. And the one thing that I was able to say, and the one thing that kind of took some of the people that I was talking to back, was that I don't feel like that would happen in my organizations. And when I said that, I had a lot of people that said, well, how can you say that? How can you say that if you violated a policy that you don't feel like you get hung out to dry? And I can honestly say that I don't. The culture within the organizations that I am in is that if you violate a policy, we are going to look at the issue, the consequence, and the reason behind the deviation from the policy or procedure or guideline or whatever you want to call it. And they're going to look at that whole situation and they're going to figure out, was it our fault or was it the employee's fault? And if you guys aren't familiar with just culture, you can Google it, but that is exactly what it is. And this isn't something new, it's been around for a very long time. But the idea behind just culture is that it holds the agency or the organization just as accountable as the employee, depending on where the violation occurred and why it occurred. So it's looking at both ends of the spectrum. And so the bigger issue and the bigger dialogue in this whole situation is that if our policies are outdated or if there are things that are in our policies that are hard to understand, there are times where employees will violate a policy and not actually know that they were doing it. There are other times where employees will violate a policy or a procedure because they truly felt like it was in the best interest at the time. Then, on the flip side, there are employees who just violate policies because they're idiots and they don't know what they're doing. So, if you take all of those things into consideration, the agency or organization looks at those violations and says, okay, was it a training issue? If it is a training issue, how can we fix this? Was it an issue of the policy being misunderstood or the employee not deciding to follow it because they just didn't have the time to grasp the concept? Maybe some remedial training. If there was a reason why they violated the policy and it was in a good faith effort, maybe we need to look at our policy and alter it. And at the worst case, if the employee just didn't care, maybe they don't need to work there anymore. So I think the just culture is really underutilized in the fire service. I know of other agencies that are using it, but by far, there's very few compared to the ones that are just using a traditional model. So when I said that to a lot of the people that I was talking to yesterday about the Atlanta situation, I truly meant that I don't feel like in any of my organizations that I could violate a policy in good faith and I would get in trouble. I just don't feel like I would. And I know a lot of the other people that I work with feel the same way. So in a day and age where a lot of us kind of feel repressed, we feel kind of put down by the organization. I feel like having this just culture or having this culture of equal discipline. So if the organization is at fault, they're going to admit that they were at fault and they're going to change a policy. If you were at fault, you're going to eat crow and you're going to get disciplined and you just deal with it. I feel like that's not the case in a lot of organizations. So if you're in a leadership position, please, please, please go look up Just Culture if you're not familiar with it. It is something that has been a breath of fresh air for me and a lot of my other coworkers for us to work in organizations that use that model. If you have questions, you can email me at david@valorfiretraining.com or you can hit me up on Facebook and Instagram. But again, I think we're going to have a lot more information that comes out about the Atlanta situation. And I hope that there is a good resolution to this. But truly, truly, truly hope that some people can use this as a catalyst to maybe look at their own policies and procedures and figure out how they can make changes so that this doesn't happen to someone else. So until we talk again, you guys take care, be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.